ذكرت بكركي كان التأييد.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's headlines. Maronite Patriarch Shada Da'i reiterates the need to elect a new president before the constitutional deadline, saying a presidential vacuum is unacceptable. President Michel Sleiman instructs the Higher Defense Council to work on endorsing a defense strategy for the country and to preserve security institutions. China evacuates more than 3,000 of its nationals from Vietnam following China's deployment of an oil rig in the South China Sea. Maronite Patriarch Shada Da'i reiterates the need to elect a new president, considering it a window of opportunity to end all crises in the country. During today's mass in Kirki, Da'i said lawmakers should carry out their national task and elect a new head of state. The Patriarch rejects vacuum at any cost, even for a day, as he says it violates the National Pact and the Constitution. He adds that those who are seeking vacuum will be held responsible for its consequences. Parliament has so far failed to elect a new president over differences between the March 8 and 14 alliances. Prime Minister Tamam Slam says he remains hopeful for the election of a new president within the constitutional deadline and urges rival groups to exert the necessary efforts to do so. The Prime Minister also said there will be no vacuum if the election for President Michel Sleiman's successor was not achieved on time, as the cabinet can assume the president's powers in accordance to Article 62 of the Constitution. Salam warned Maronite leaders against opposing the cabinet exercising that power during any void of the presidency, saying such rejection will affect the situation in general and legislative power too. Lebanon has only a week left to elect a new head of state after 5 failed attempts to vote on a new president. Saudi Ambassador to Lebanon Ali Awad Asiri has stressed the importance of Prime Minister Tamam Slam's upcoming visit to the kingdom, expressing hope the presidential election will consolidate ties among the Lebanese. Asiri says Salam's visit is an opportunity to enhance ties between the two countries, and both will discuss the developments in the region. Salam is expected to travel to Saudi Arabia on Monday, where he will meet with senior officials. Asiri hailed the Premier's cabinet, expressing relief over its accomplishments. On Wednesday, Asiri and Tourism Minister Michel Faraoun announced the kingdom had lifted a travel ban to Lebanon after the security situation improved in the country. Future movement leader Saad Hariri has traveled from Saudi Arabia to Paris, where he has met with Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja. Al Hayat newspaper reported that Jaja had met with Saudi Foreign Minister Saud al-Faisal, who is currently in Paris. Faisal also met with future bloc leader MP Fouad Sanyura and is scheduled to meet with Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat in the French capital later today. President Michel Sleiman has instructed the Higher Defense Council to work on endorsing a defense strategy for the country and to preserve the security institutions. Sleiman, who leaves office in a week, chaired a meeting of the council at Babda Palace in the presence of senior security officials. Higher Defense Council Chief General Mohammed Khair says high-ranking security officials briefed gatherers on the implemented security measures and the course of a security plan implemented in the northern city of Tripoli and the northern Bekaa Valley. Sleiman has drafted a proposal for a national defense strategy and distributed it to political foes during a national dialogue session in September of 2012. The president's proposal would allow Hezbollah to keep its arms, but place them under the command of the Lebanese army, which would have exclusive authority to use force. The proposal has not advanced after dialogue sessions reached a stalemate later during that year. 2 rockets from Syria hit a Bekaa Valley town with no casualties reported. An army statement says the rockets fired from the eastern mountain range hit the Bekaa Valley town of Hor al-Tal'a at around 11:20 a.m. Military experts inspected the blast sites. And coming up next, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says clinching a final nuclear deal with world powers is still possible. More after the break. Welcome back. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says clinching a final nuclear deal with world powers is still possible despite a tough round of talks this week. Referring to Iran's long-style dispute with world powers over its suspected nuclear program, Zarif tweeted, "Agreement is possible, but illusions need to go. Opportunity shouldn't be missed again like in 2005. Iran and 6 world powers ended a 4th round of nuclear talks in Vienna on Friday with no tangible progress. The P5+1 group wants Iran to radically scale back its nuclear activities, making any dash for an atomic bomb virtually impossible and easily detectable. The parties want to clinch a deal by July the 20th, when a November interim deal expires, under which Iran froze certain activities in return for some relief from crippling Western sanctions. In return for further concessions, the Islamic Republic, which denies seeking an atomic weapon, wants the lifting of all UN and Western sanctions, which have caused major damage to its economy." Yemeni troops have killed a local al-Qaeda commander and 4 of his aides in clashes in a southern province, where the army has been waging an offensive against militant network. Yemeni forces have faced a wave of hit-and-run attacks by the insurgents since the army captured their strongholds in Al-Mahfad in Abyan province. Many of the militants from the al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and its affiliate, Ansar al-Sharia, fled to the mountains and turned to guerrilla tactics against security forces and government facilities. U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Wendy Sherman says nations will have to work in collective manner in order to combat Nigeria's Islamist extremist group Boko Haram. Sherman was speaking to reporters after a summit in Paris, which brought together representatives of 5 African nations, as well as Britain, the U.S. and France, to hammer out a plan to find and rescue almost 300 schoolgirls being held hostage by the group.
How do we move forward? Nigeria has had a lot on its hands. The world is aware of these young schoolgirls who were abducted. But quite frankly, Boko Haram has been creating havoc for some time. And now the world's attention is on that fact. All of the nations surrounding have their eyes on that fact. Cameroon just suffered its own Boko Haram attack at a Chinese company last night. So we are all coordinated. We are all focused. This doesn't stop at borders. Terrorism does not know borders, and so we are going to work in a collective manner to get the job done. So whether it is on development, whether it is the deployment of intelligence assets to understand where the girls may be, I think it's now become our girls, not just Nigeria's girls. It's the world's girls, and there is a very deep commitment to bring them home.
Switzerland is to hold a referendum on whether to raise the minimum wage to nearly $25 an hour, the world's highest. Surveys suggest that today's vote will end with 2/3 of Swiss voters rejecting the motion. Critics argue that such a high minimum wage could damage the economy, but supporters say the move is justified by high living costs. They add that higher basic wages would boost the buying power of some 330,000 people, or 1 in 10 employees in Switzerland. The Swiss Trade Union Federation submitted the referendum to protect equitable pay in 2012 in keeping Switzerland's tradition of direct democracy. Voters in the country who collect 100,000 signatures can force a binding referendum on any issue. The Swiss will also be voting on a multi-billion-dollar deal to buy fighter jets from Sweden. And now for news around the world in brief. The Turkish government has pledged a thorough investigation into the deaths of some 300 people in the Soma mine disaster, as residents in the town were subjected to police searches, arrests, and a ban on protests. Police patrolled the town, set up checkpoints, and arrested dozens of people to enforce a ban on protests set down by the local governor following clashes on Friday. A total of 36 people were arrested. The husband of a Sudanese woman sentenced to death for converting to Christianity says he will appeal against the ruling. Mariam Yahya Ibrahim Ishaq had been ordered to abandon her newly adopted Christian faith and return to Islam. She has also been charged with adultery for marrying a Christian man. Her husband, Daniel Wani, was pronounced innocent, but their marriage was revoked. Wani said he feared for the health of his wife and the unborn child while she is kept in prison. North Korean authorities have made a series of rare public apologies after the collapse of an unfinished 23-story block of flats in Pyongyang that is believed to have killed multiple residents. The official news agency KCNA says the accident was the result of irresponsible supervision by officials in charge of the construction. An emergency rescue effort had been carried out to rescue survivors and treat the wounded. China has evacuated more than 3,000 of its nationals from Vietnam following China's deployment of an oil rig in contested waters. Today's announcement came after Vietnamese civil society groups called for fresh demonstrations against China following riots earlier this week, which left 2 Chinese workers dead and more than 100 injured. The violence in industrial parks has heightened tensions between the neighbors over sovereignty in the South China Sea. Vietnamese authorities followed up a warning they would resolutely prevent any further outbursts by breaking up small protests in 2 cities today. Several arrests were reportedly made in the capital Hanoi and commercial hub Ho Chi Minh City within minutes of groups trying to start protests. For all the soccer and samba fans out there, on the occasion of this year's FIFA World Cup, Pitbull, Jennifer Lopez and Claudia Leite have released an official music video for the Brazilian World Cup anthem, We Are One. The Latin-flavored trio performs in the colorful streets of Brazil, while hundreds of carnival-ready people swarm around them and dance. Check it out.
Quando eu chamo o mundo inteiro pra jogar é pra mostrar que eu posso torcer, chorar, sorrir, gritar. Não importa o resultado, vamos extravasar.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Tonight, Patriarch Shaddai reiterates the need to elect a new president before the constitutional deadline, saying a presidential vacuum is unacceptable. President Michel Sleiman instructs the Higher Defense Council to work on endorsing a defense strategy for the country and to preserve security institutions. And China evacuates more than 3,000 of its nationals from Vietnam following China's deployment of an oil rig in the South China Sea. Those are your Sunday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.
مذكرة كركي كانت